Me 45, sociology professor at a mid-tier university in Oregon, got my doctorate in social structures, published a few books on systemic inequality, been in the game for nearly 2 decades. Tenured for the last 7, my signature class is Hierarchy and Gender in the Modern Era, always a packed room, usually caps at 90 students. Vast majority are female, handful of guys usually show up. They're either chasing an easy elective or trying to impress a girl. Current semester starts like any other, about 90 heads in the lecture hall. Maybe a dozen dudes scattered around the back. They usually keep their heads down and mouths shut, which works for me. Curriculum is designed for the female experience anyway. Week 3 involves the standard module on patriarchal dividends, explaining how society is rigged to favor men even when they don't see it, talking about the invisible backpack of advantages and the mental load women carry. Recited this lecture 100 times. Could do it in my sleep. Look out at the sea of nodding heads and scratching pens, spot a guy in the 3rd row who doesn't fit. The mold looks about 26, older than the fresh-faced kids around him. Posture is rigid, haircut is high and tight. Guessing ex-military, or maybe worked the oil fields before school. He isn't nodding along like the rest, just staring at me with a blank face and writing constantly. Bell rings and everyone shuffles out. Military guy walks straight up to the podium, tall, polite, dressed like he's going to a job interview. Doctor Holloway, my name is Caleb Vance. Had a couple questions regarding the material today. Hold back an eye roll, brace myself for the usual not all men speech. Tell him my office hours are Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 3. Say I prefer to handle deep dives in private rather than the hallway. He gives a sharp nod and says he'll be there. Thursday rolls around and he knocks at 1 p.m. on the dot, waits for me to wave him in. Before crossing the threshold, sits down with a straight back. Pulls out a pristine notebook with tabbed sections. So, Caleb, what was confusing you about the lecture? He flips to a specific page. You said male privilege is a universal constant regardless of economic status, and that it functions without the subject being aware of it. I am trying to reconcile that with universal application. Here comes the fragility. Give him the standard breakdown. Privilege isn't a free ride. It's just a lack of specific roadblocks based on sex. Basic intersectional theory. He listens intently, not interrupting. I get the framework you are using, Professor. I am asking about the operational reality versus the theory. Okay, most kids don't drill down this hard. Ask him for a specific instance. He checks his notes again. You mentioned women carry the entire burden of emotional management and household maintenance. How does this model account for single fathers raising kids alone? Or widowers handling all domestic duties? Fair point, but easy to parry. Tell him those are statistical outliers. We study the rule. Not the exception and bulk of unpaid labor falls on women in the aggregate. He writes that, down verbatim, is there a specific threshold where a behavior becomes a systemic pattern versus personal choice? He's hunting for hard data, which is rare for a sophomore. Tell him studies prove women do triple the housework, even in dual-income homes. He jots it down. Do you have the numbers for single-father households? Admit, I don't have those figures handy. Tell him it's outside the scope, since we focus on traditional dynamics. He doesn't push, but I can tell he isn't buying it. Shifts gears to the Tuesday lecture. You stated the wage gap is proof of the devaluation of female labor. 84 cents to the dollar, standard economics. Nothing wild. Yes, that is a well-documented fact of discrimination. He nods again, face totally neutral. Is that 84 cents comparing identical roles with identical tenure? Or is that an aggregate of all earnings nationwide? Sharp kid admit it's nuanced, but the gap persists even when you control variables. Core issue is society underpaying fields dominated by women. He writes it down slowly. What about hazard pay? Men account for 92% of workplace deaths. Logging, deep-sea fishing, oil rigs, roofing. Those jobs pay higher because they kill people. Is that factored into the average? Feeling a headache coming on, he is dismantling the narrative brick by brick, insists that the gap exists within safe jobs too. Argue that men dominating dangerous fields is just another side of patriarchy. He stops writing and looks up. So the system forces men into lethal jobs, pays them more to compensate for the risk of death, And that higher pay is classified as a privilege despite the mortality rate? Phrase like that? It sounds insane. Tell him he is oversimplifying a complex sociological web. Say we need to view the power dynamic holistically. He eases off the throttle, but I can tell he's got one more round in the chamber. Last point regarding the invisible safety concept. I mentioned that men walk through life without the constant background radiation of fear, don't have to check the back seat of the car, or carry pepper spray. Standard talking point usually gets a lot of nods. He asks for clarification on the freedom from violence aspect. Statistically, men make up 78% of homicide victims, and over 80% of aggravated assault cases. Stranger violence in public spaces is overwhelmingly a male issue. How does that data align with the concept of safety privilege? Hit with the raw numbers. Didn't have those queued up. Pivot to the qualitative difference. Explain that women face sexual violence and domestic terror. It's about the type of fear, not just the body count. He pauses, processing the logic. So both sexes face violence, but we categorize female fear as a systemic oppression, and male victimization rates as a form of privilege. I am struggling to find the consistency in that. Patience is wearing thin. Tell him he's trying to dismantle the existence of patriarchy instead of learning how it functions. Warn him against derailing the academic process. He closes the notebook. Face remains a mask. Not trying to disprove anything. Sir, just trying to map the theory onto my lived reality. The classic anecdotal fallacy. Remind him that his personal life doesn't negate macro-level sociology. Privilege is a tailwind, even if you don't feel it. Blowing, he stands up, thanks me for the time, and leaves. Feel a weird knot in my stomach. Usually these guys get angry or defensive. He just seemed confused, like he's trying to solve a math problem with missing numbers. Next week, rolls around topic is toxic masculinity, discussing how the patriarchy puts men in a box, how they repress emotion and refuse help, leading to suicide and substance abuse. Caleb is there, scribbling away open the floor for the last 15 minutes. Usually the girls share stories about their stoic dads. Caleb raises his hand. First time he's spoken in the lecture hall, gut tightens, but I nod at him. Go ahead, Caleb. He stands up, turns to face the room, very formal, like he's briefing a squad. Wanted to offer some context for my earlier questions. Here comes the personal derailment. I'm 26, started college late. Enlisted on my 18th birthday, served 8 years. 3 tours, 2 in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan. Room goes quiet, pencils stop moving. Lost a dozen friends over there. Held 3 of them while they bled out in the sand. Came home with a TBI and severe PTSD. Took me 2 years just to learn how to be in a classroom again. Raising my 6-year-old daughter solo. Her mom took off when she was a toddler. Voice is steady, monotone, just listing facts. I work 30 hours a week as a mechanic to keep the lights on. Carry a full credit load, 3.8 G, PA, cook, clean, help with homework, handle the nightmares. I can feel the energy in the room shift. Everyone is staring at him. When I was deployed, Uncle Sam paid me $2,400 a month to get shot at. Missed my daughter's birth to watch my buddies die. People back here made more stocking shelves. That was the wage gap from my perspective. He pauses. Letting that sink in, when I got back, I was told to suck it up. Attempted to check out early twice before I got help. That's the toxic masculinity I lived. Students are looking at their shoes. Now VA put me on an 18-month wait list for a therapist. Female vets got expedited care because the system flagged them as higher risk. When my ex left, the court assumed I was unfit. Male, veteran, PTSD history. Cost me 15 grand in legal fees to prove I wasn't a danger to my own kid. Mother didn't have to prove a thing. Silence is absolute. I'm not saying women have it easy. I'm not saying the system is perfect. But this framework we're studying feels incomplete. He looks right at me. I've been told I have male privilege my whole life, while getting mortared, while burying friends, while fighting for custody, while working 2 jobs and raising a girl alone. If I'm benefiting from invisible advantages, I'd hate to see what disadvantage looks like. Silence hangs heavy in the air. Question is burning a hole in the whiteboard behind me. Where was the invisible knapsack of privilege when he was bleeding in the desert? Where was the systemic advantage in family court? Every pair of eyes is locked on me, waiting for the rebuttal feel completely naked. My entire academic career feels flimsy against the weight of what he just said. Thank you for sharing that, Caleb. That took a lot of guts to say. But we have to be careful not to conflate individual tragedy with sociological trends. Words taste like ash in my mouth. Even as I say them, girl in the front row raises her hand. She's usually the first one to agree with the text. Doctor. Holloway, isn't our whole curriculum based on listening to women's lived experiences? Why is his story an anecdote, but ours is data? She's not trying to be mean. She's genuinely confused. Head start nodding. Logic bomb just went off. If the collective personal is political for women, why isn't it for men? Caleb speaks up again, doesn't bother raising his hand. What is the threshold for a pattern, sir? How many suicides do we need? How many homeless vets or dads losing their kids? At what number does it stop being sad individual cases and start being a gender issue? I've got nothing. Check the clock. That is a valid line of inquiry, but it falls outside today's scope. Let's pivot back to the reading on emotional repression. Weakest dodge of my life, can feel the respect in the room. Evaporate lecture drags on to the end. But the energy is dead. Class dismisses and half the girls swarm. Caleb's desk, they're asking if he's okay. Talking about their own dads or brothers. Leave the hall feeling like a fraud. Go back to my office and pull his file. Immediately need to know if he's some plant or an activist record is spotless. Honorable discharge. Purple Heart. Commendation. Metal Soul physical and legal custody of a minor work study approved for a local garage kid is on the dean's list every term while turning wrenches. He's not a troll, he's just a guy surviving. Can't sleep that night. Keeps replaying the invisible privilege lecture in my head. Realize I've been teaching a map that doesn't match the terrain. Decide to bite the bullet. Next Tuesday walk in, ignore the syllabus. Last week, Caleb brought up a blind spot in the material. We talk about intersectionality regarding race and class, but we haven't really applied it to the male experience, specifically veterans and single fathers. Caleb is watching me, pen hovering. I've been presenting privilege as a universal constant. Clearly, it is more situational than that. Feel like I'm stripping in front of the class, admitting I was wrong, is against the tenure code of conduct. Caleb raises his hand. Professor, I'm not asking you to throw out the book, just asking for an addendum. System grinds everyone down, just uses different gears for different people. Look at him. Is that a fair assessment? He nods. Yeah. That's fair. Rest of the semester feels different. Tension is gone. Other guys start speaking up stories about dangerous jobs. Being told to man up when they were hurting, class discussion actually becomes a discussion instead of an echo chamber. It's messy and complicated and way better than the canned lecture finals. Week rolls around. Caleb stops by during office hours to drop off his paper. Wanted to say thanks, Doc. Most professors would have kicked me out or doubled down. Appreciate you letting me speak my piece. Feel a pang of guilt. I should be thanking you. You taught the class more in 10 minutes than I did in 10 years. Taught me the difference between a model and reality. He cracks a smile for the first time. What's the plan for next semester? Lean back in my chair. Going to frame the theory as a lens, not the gospel. Make sure the map includes all the roads, even the ones I haven't walked. He nods. Slowly, looks like he finally got what he came for. Just wanted an admission that the map wasn't the territory. Extend a hand across the desk. He grips it, callous against soft palm. You made me do a real audit of my own material, Caleb. Didn't enjoy it, but I needed it. He shoulders his bag and walks out. Sit there in the silence for a long time, thinking about 15 years of lectures. How many other guys sat there in silence, feeling invisible or demonized? How many times did I confuse my ideology for objective truth? Crack open the syllabus file on my laptop, start tearing it apart, add modules on the disposability of men, add readings on the suicide paradox and family court bias. Add a section on how rigid roles crush men, just as hard as women, just differently. Colleague from down the hall leans in, sees the new reading list on the screen. Drifting into men's rights territory, are we? Tone is icy. Usually I'd backpedal today. I just shrug. It's not politics, it's completeness. Can't teach a system if you ignore half the components. She gives me a look, like I just farted in church, and walks away. Rumor mill spins up fast. Department chair summons me 2 days later. People are saying you're overhauling the core curriculum based on one student's complaints. Administration gets nervous about both sides' rhetoric. Straighten my tie. It wasn't a complaint, it was a fact check. Kid showed me a blind spot the size of a tank. We preach critical thinking. I'm just applying it to our own dogma, she sighs, tapping her pen. Just be careful, Holloway. Tenure protects your job, not your reputation. Don't turn my department into a battleground. Tell her I'm just turning it into a classroom next semester. Starts enrollment is through the roof. Waitlist is 10 deep. Word got out that the echo chamber is closed. Room is a mix of demographics. Now we still cover the patriarchy, still cover the wage gap, but now we cover the glass cellar alongside the glass ceiling. Discussions are actually debates. Now, girls are hearing things they never considered. Guys are speaking up without looking terrified. It's messy, it's heated, and it's the best teaching I've ever done. TFW, a 26-year-old mechanic, schooled a PhD. TFW. You realize you were indoctrinating instead of educating. TFW. Admitting you were wrong is the hardest part of the job. TFW. The world is gray and you were painting it black and white, still a progressive. Still believe the system is broken, but now I know it cuts both ways. Caleb Vance was the most important student I ever had. Didn't write a brilliant thesis or go on to grad school, just stood his ground and forced me to look at the uncomfortable truth. That's what this university was supposed to be about in the first place, not confirming what we already know, but challenging what we think we're sure of.